Good evening and good. This is Mr. Funton Daniel speaking here from the great state of Texas. I am very delighted on the message Kenyan President William Ruto, Dr. William Ruto, spoke candidly with the French president. He was very frankly and spoke the minds of Africa vis-a-vis the French president. And these questions focus on International Monetary Fund, including IMF, International Monetary Bank. Those two essential organizations, or those two pieces of organizations, control global affairs of financial transactions all over the world. And yet, Africans are underrepresented. Remember that IMF and they solely control how much financial reallocations in the world over. And yet, Africans are less likely to get financial aspect for infrastructural development. In other words, Africans are restricted to how much they can borrow for its infrastructural investment. They use the bank as a weapon to promote dictatorship in Africa rather than economic policy or economic infrastructure development. What William Ruto, the Kenyan president, is saying, they want a complete eradicate those organizations and restructure it to meet the current dispensations where everyone is represented, not just France solely control the organizations. Of course, he gives a good, clear narratives, what he thinks or what he believes is required for that financial institution in global economy. Can you imagine that? That is why the one thing I wanted to make clarification is that Africans need to elect leaders that are intelligent, educated, and have knowledge about world affairs, economic, monetary policy, and how Africa can move forward. Let's take, for example, we have Nigeria, whom they just elected or whom they just defraud an elections. And now he became the president of Nigeria. He's fully unaware of a reality. He was in France. And that is why France is very smart. France immediately invited them to sign a memorandum of understanding how France can control West Africa, including the rest of the 14 nations. And that is why France immediately invited all of them to sign a memorandum of understanding, because France is aware that they are not aware of their reality. And that is how Africans remain poor without any infrastructural development, because France takes responsibility to control every wealth that comes to that place. Since he is the president, France has an opportunity to invite them to sign an undertaking. You all look about the last Nigerian president. There was a preparation for a new currency to take effect. France manipulated that currency, never materialized, and destroyed that visions. Let's look. Many Africans leave African country, travel to Europe, seek for better opportunity. And yet, agriculture, infrastructural development, gold, diamond, all the various minerals comes from Africa, and yet citizens of Africa migrate from Africa to Europe, where they either drown or they die or they get disrupted. Meanwhile, those resources leave Africa to Europe, and yet the Africans are suffering to cross to Europe in order to benefit. Africa needs visionary leaders. All these people that we have in the current century that are not mindedly educated are destroying the fabric of Africa. It's time we take up control and revitalize the system, the structure of Africa that meet the dispensations of the current century. It requires educated leaders who understand the value and the fundamentals of the world economy. And to achieve that, we have to have a leader that is mentally stable, is aware of reality. It is imperative that Africa must change. If we cannot change, then we were going to be relegated to the downward stream. I agree with William Ruto, the Kenyan president, emphasized the importance of having an African on the table in regard to the financial aspect of the world economy, and not France dictating on how those world economy must manifest. That financial aspect will have Africa have control, having a voice, decision making, not solely France dictating on who has to do what and what kind. Of course, we understand that they recently appoint one person as a part of the finance. That's just a bogus. He has no power. The fact that he's an African doesn't necessarily mean giving him the right or privilege. They dictate to him what he has to do. Unlike a financial institution where Africans have the voice to determine the aspect. Like what happened in West Africa, where the new currency that was supposed to have taken effect failed because France intervened because of its French influence in certain African countries. And that made it the worst nightmare. Why can African create its own financial institution that if you are buying from Africa, you need to buy under this aspect? And it is very imperative that Africa needs globalization, strong economy, and infrastructural policy that meet the current, not just rely on the economic of Adam Smith, that you all know the economic of Adam Smith, and that is the economic of Adam Smith. That is what makes African relegated to the back of the stream. It says economic of specializations. So if African is specialized in agriculture, let them focus on agriculture. And those countries that specialize in heavy machinery, let them focus on those heavy machineries. So in other words, you cannot do anything. African cannot migrate into different area of the economy. They should only focus on agriculture. And that has relegated Africans, and that is why infrastructural development has stalled. And yet Africans has nowhere to go. It requires leadership like William Ruto that speak clearly and make it point openly. And that is the vision that Africa need to face. Having people who spoken facts, not just accepting, yes sir, we, no. It is time the restructure of African infrastructural development to meet the world needs of Africans. Let's stop these migrations where at least 600 people are sinking in the water just crossing to Europe because of financial aspect that could have been done here. The land is there, the economic is there, but they need financial aspect, and that can be done through the monetary policy that everyone have access to, not restricted to a certain individual or group of individuals. That is how Africa must revitalize its economic structure to meet the global need of all of Africans. And I appreciate President Ruto's philosophy, speaking as it is. Let the world understand. This is Fundon Daniel speaking from the great state of Texas here in the United States. Have a good evening.